Welcome one and all. It's time for a tournament report. Not just any tournament report. Potentially the world's first Age of Sigmar 4th edition tournament report. How is that possible, you very well may ask, because 4th edition isn't even out yet. The rules aren't out, the war scrolls aren't out. How can anyone be running a tournament with 4th edition rules? Well, the rules may not be out, but they are out there. People in the community have had access to them. As far as war scrolls, there have been people on live streams selling views of war scrolls, essentially. So they are out there. There are people that have had access to all of them, access to all of the rules. The entire core rules have been available online for some time now. This is a very long and drawn-out preview cycle. So there was enough out there for this tournament to be run using 4th edition rules. This is Spiteful 16. It is a mixed doubles friendly Age of Sigmar tournament. Once a year, a gentleman named Francois comes over from Canada and puts on an event, invites all the cool people from the Age of Sigmar community that he knows, and if that doesn't fill up the quota, then asks other people if they know cool people to invite along as well, trying to get 16 so that you can have a different teammate in every round, and that you get the chance to play with or against every other player over the course of a weekend. Now, this year, a slight issue with that plan. Some people had to pull out quite late. Others jumped into the empty slots, but were then ill, so we ended up with 12 players. And it was decided that the best way to do that was to play 5 games over the weekend and have a fixed teammate, and then you play against each of the other teams once, so you'd get to interact with everybody. However, another snag to that plan was that we didn't get time to play 5 games over the weekend because this is a brand new edition. Nobody knew the rules going in. We were learning on the fly, so we only got 4 games in. So you're going to see 4 red hot spicy, hot off the presses games of Age of Sigmar 4th edition. What did we not have access to prior to this event? We did not have access to the points. So we had access to any war scrolls we needed. There were various people at the event who have seen all the war scrolls through various means, and we just don't know how many points everything's going to be, so we were using the last points from 3rd edition for the units. So in terms of army balance, this isn't going to be 100% accurate because some points are going to be wildly different, I imagine. So we're going with the most recent points that were available and all the rules that we know, and the battle plans which we have, and the battle tactics which we have, so we can play the game as intended but with points slightly askew. So anyone who's watching this live, feel free to drop comments into the chat. If there's anything you want to ask about specific units that maybe you're not aware of yet, I'm sure I can divulge some highly secret, sensitive information. So let's have a look. And I've obviously taken Stormcast, so it's 1,000 points each per player, so 2,000 points per side on the table in this doubles format. You also have 500 points as a sideboard, as they call it, which means you can change your list between games and switch out 500 points worth of units. So, having seen the Stormcast Eternals War Scrolls for some of the units before the weekend, I picked out which units I'd already seen and looked pretty tasty, and that I could print the War Scrolls out to. So I would have actually something to look at during the game as rules reference. So, as you can see on the screen here, I selected Bastion, who is visible there. I selected Yndrasta, who was not used in this game, but she will be used in some of the other games, if you're a big Yndrasta fan, and you should be, because she's got some pretty tasty rules now. Bastion does as well. I'll tell you a little bit about their rules before we start, once I've told you everything else that I took. 2 concussors, and I've been waiting since 1st edition for concussors to be anywhere near useful, and they are definitely useful now. So obviously all this is dependent on how many points they're going to be, but that's something that can go up and down over the course of an edition. So in terms of purely on their rules, without knowing the points, concussors seem pretty good now. I also took 2 Tempesters in my list, but I think they are featuring in this game as well. And they are very similar to how they were. And I've taken 3 Long Strikes, who are very different to how they performed in the previous edition, but still very useful, as we'll find out. I don't have them in my list for game 1. I also took the Lord Veritant because the new version of this model is in the Age of Sigmar starter box for 4th edition, so they've given him some fancy new rules. And I've also taken 3 Prosecutors, who are also in the new box with new models, so they get some fancy upgraded rules as well. So, let's show you the backs of some of my units. So I'll talk you through a little bit about Bastion first of all and tell you what's different about him. So, the running theme with Stormcast and a lot of the other armies, there's a couple of things that they've done. Mortal wound shooting seems to be on the outs. I didn't see any way of doing mortal wounds with shooting attacks. Spells, yes, but not mortal wounds from shooting. They also seem to be getting rid of kind of passive table-wide abilities that encourage you to hide your heroes or just keep them back behind the lines. They want you throwing your heroes into the action now. So, for example, Bastion used to have a table-wide command that he could issue to a Stormcast unit. Now he just gets free commands of all-out attack when the unit is wholly within 12 inches of him. So you're encouraged to throw him in with your units that you're fighting with. And that's a big deal as well, getting free commands, because command points are very hard to come by in this edition. You can't easily generate more, and you will be spending a lot of them, often in your opponent's turn, on reactions. So that's very handy. But that's just an example of how they're encouraging you to get into the action with the heroes. And they've also taken away his infinite range, basically a shooting attack that he used to do in the hero phase. He now just has a standard shooting attack, which is only 18 inch range. So again, all the rules encouraging you to get your heroes into combat, which is where they should be. He still heals when he kills things as well, so that's good. Yndrasta, who is not featuring in this list, she is the perfect anti-monster killer now. So, all her spear attacks, because she has a spear and the sword. The spear, which is a shooting and a close combat attack, do double damage against monsters and have extra rend against monsters. So she is really good against monsters, obviously, Yndrasta. She's also, along with the Prosecutors, have 3d6 charge as well, which is very nice. If you're coming in through being zapped down from the heavens and 9 inches away from the enemy, then a 3d6 charge is very handy. And for that rule particularly, it feels like that's something that might get hit in this edition, because redeploy is no longer contingent on you moving to within 9 inches of the enemy and setting it off. They just get to do a redeploy at the end of all your movements, so it'll be after you land your units down. So if you have a unit of Annihilators that come down near the enemy, then they can redeploy away from you. So you're going to have to pick your spot very carefully, maybe target multiple units or block them off with other units first. And having a 3d6 charge on some of the units is very handy for those kind of situations where the enemy has redeployed away from you. Yndrasta's other big thing is that she negates negative modifiers to control scores for nearby Stormcast units. So your control score is how much you're worth on objectives. So if the enemy has a special rule where they can reduce how much you're worth by 5 or what have you, Yndrasta can ignore that, so that's very handy. Concussors. So, I said they're getting rid of mortal wound shooting, and the Draconic Lightning Breath has definitely suffered from that, so it no longer does mortal wounds. It can do some good damage with good rend. It's got rend 2, d3 damage, so it's decent. They still do mortals in close combat with their hammers, which is nice. And the most exciting thing, though, about Concussors, if you ask me, is that they basically have a raw ability now. So the enemy, when you're in combat with them, on a 3+, you can just prevent commands being used on that unit, which is very nice indeed. They also, there's other faction-wide specific rules that you can usually put on one unit per turn as well, and I'm not 100% sure yet when some of these are applied to the army, whether you can just use all of them, or whether you have to take a certain chambers as the bulk of your army to unlock that, because we also don't have the rules for which heroes can take which units in their entourage as well. That's another thing we're lacking in addition to points. So it's a great way to learn the 4th edition rules, but it's not a perfectly accurate representation of what the games will look like on the table and what the army compositions will be. Okay, next one are the Prosecutors. So 3d6 charge, and their cool trick now is that they do extra damage on the charge, which they're likely to get because they have the 3d6 charge. So they're cool. The long strikes. So are they really long strikes anymore? Because they've reduced them to 18-inch range from 30. And who have I got on my... I've got these guys in the sky here, Tempesters and Prosecutors. So, long strikes. They're really interesting now. If you stand still, you can target heroes, which is really cool, because often you can't do that. If they're hanging around other units, then you either can't target them or you get -1 to hit, but they can ignore those rules if they stand still. But they can also move, run, shoot, and charge all at the same time if you really want to. And that's really interesting, the run and shoot ability, because that means that if you redeploy in the enemy turn, that is a move that counts as a run. So then you could also counter shoot with them as well in the enemy's shooting phase. So if you use a couple of command points, you can move closer to the enemy or further away from them if that's what you want, and then also shoot on their turn as well. So long strikes, very, very useful for that little combo. It's pricey though, with the command points. Tempesters, they seem to have taken a little bit of a hit, although they do get something back as well. They've got an ability now where if they damage any units with their crossbows, then on a 2+, that unit can't use all-out defense in the next combat phase, which is quite good. And obviously they've lost their mortal wounds from the lightning breath attack of the Dracoths, and they also don't do as many hits as they used to. It used to be, for every hit you get, that turns into a second hit. Now it's only if you roll a 6, it turns into a second hit. So not quite as good. And fighting in close combat, they're actually slightly worse now in close combat than they used to be, the Tempesters. The Dracoths are still about the same. They haven't changed too much. Although they've tried to bring all the hit and wound rolls and just the whole profile, they've tried to bring it in more in line across the game. So you see more things that hit on a 4 now. So for example, the Dracoths hit on a 4 but wound on a 2, which makes sense because it's a big monster creature mount. It's like getting kicked by a horse. Chances are it probably won't hit you because it maybe not kicking that accurately, but if it does hit you, it should do some damage. So I quite like that. Lord Veritant can do prayers, which is obviously nice, and as far as I'm aware, you don't have to pick prayers now, you just can do any of them, but you do have to build up your prayer points before you can cash them in to use prayers now, which is a cool mechanic. And he can also unbind and makes it more difficult for enemy wizards to do their spells when he's around, until his companion dies, which is, it's a token, so that's when you, if you roll a 1 on an armor save, your token is removed. So we can do that for a while at least. So those are the units that I've taken in my entire force. Not all of them are present in game 1. So you can see Prosecutors and Tempesters off the table at the start. And you can also tell that I'm teamed up with Ogres here. So I'm going to be teaming up with this Ogre army in all the games, but the Ogre models won't be the same in each one. So this one has 4 units of Mournfang. It has a Butcher and a Tyrant. So the Butcher being a spellcaster, the Tyrant being a nice fighty Ogre general. So Mournfang pretty fast, and they can hit quite hard. In the first game we're up against the Deepkin, and you can see there's a couple of nasty sharks there. And let's get close-ups of the enemy here. So we've got Deepkin, and we've also got some horrible, vile Slaves to Darkness forces here. So we've got some Chaos Warriors, we've got a Leader, we've got some Knights, we've got a Demon Prince, we've got some Harpies, we've got some more Chaos Warriors. There's loads of these Deepkin sharks in this list. And their cool new thing is that if they hit you with one of their attacks, and I think if they damage you, then you're reduced to 1d6 charge for the next turn, which is obviously quite significant, because the chance, even if you get right next to the enemy, that drastically increases your chances of failing a charge. So that's quite a significant debuff you can put on the enemy. And there's also this hero as well, who I can't immediately identify because I haven't played against Deepkin that much. But you can see game already underway here. The new battle tactics, I suppose I could tell you a little bit about those if you've not seen them. no one has faction battle tactics anymore. We just have general battle tactics, and then each Grand Alliance has a couple of unique ones as well that only they can use. It remains to be seen whether, as the battle tomes come out, whether we'll get faction-specific ones as well. At least says what points are being used. So, because no one in the world seems to have access to the points yet, that's the one thing that hasn't been leaked anywhere, we're using the most recent 3rd edition points for all the units. So it's a good way to learn the rules, but army composition will be slightly different when the points are out. So, the universal battle tactics, let's have a quick look at those. So, they involve things like... Oh, we've got Perfidy in the chat. Good evening. So, we've got a battle tactic of getting into a fight and not dying. We've got battle tactics like picking a unit in the enemy general's regiment and killing it. We've got take 2 objectives, at least one of them, off your opponent. We've got control a terrain feature that's partly or wholly within enemy territory. We have got get a couple of units in the centre, not in combat. And we've got get a unit to each short table edge, but not set up this turn. So, you might think some of those sound easy, and they would have been in 3rd edition. However, in this edition, you have far more reactions. So redeploy is not set off by going within 9 inches anymore. And there's also countercharge, which has a potential, usually 12-inch threat range with it. And some units will be able to maybe run and charge as well, so they could redeploy and also countercharge. So that means, not only that, but you can also cast a counter spell in your opponent's turn as well. So if you've got any teleport spells, you can maybe teleport a unit to a position that's really annoying for countering a battle tactic. So you might think it's easy, just controlling an objective or a piece of terrain, but the enemy do have far more ways to interfere with your battle tactics now. So it's much more interactive. You have to think about it. It's not just automatic. We've got Kahdeen in the chat. Good evening. Interested to see people play that aren't exclusive 40k players. Well, yes. I haven't played 40k for quite a few editions now. So, far more ways to shut down enemy battle tactics, and you have to think much more carefully about them. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to teleport my unit over there, and we're going to score the battle tactic because they can't do anything about it. Now, there's countercharges, there's redeploys, there's teleport spells that can be used in your turn that can mess with it. The enemy can cast endless spells into positions that are inconvenient for your battle tactic as well. So it's a far more interactive game. There's nothing that's just automatic unless you've already wiped out most of the enemy and the table is quite open and you've set it up in advance by being in a good position. Let's see. Nuke Man says 40k did a massive disservice when they took away most of the list building. So, list building in Age of Sigmar is still less in-depth than it is in the old world, of course, where you can pick the number of models in a unit. Age of Sigmar is still, you plug in exactly what the unit is on its war scroll, and some units can be reinforced, so you just take double the unit. And other than that, it's pretty straightforward. You do have some upgrades you can take, but the list building is fairly simple. It's more simple than it used to be, actually, because you pick a hero and then you take some units with them to be in their regiment. So, you can see here that this dice next to the Lord Veritant is representing how many prayer points he's accumulated. So he's got 4, so each prayer will have a value, and you can then cash those in order to use the prayer, or you can keep building them up until you get more, and then maybe use a better prayer. So you can see that I believe in the first round we've gone for the battle tactic of having 2 units in the centre of the table not in combat. And because it's the Concussors and Bastion in there, who are quite tough and beastly, the enemy would have a choice to try and deny this battle tactic by doing a long-range counter-charge, but it's a very long charge and it costs you 2 command points to do that. So not only are you likely to fail it, but also because we've got 2 really strong units there, there's a chance that even if they make it in, they would all be killed anyway. So probably not the time to be trying that. It's 2 command points, and you only get 4 in each turn, and you don't get them back. 4 in each battle round, should I say, not turn. That's important. So if you use them all on your opponent's turn doing counters, you won't have anything left for your turn. So you might think every turn you're going to be doing an all-out attack and an all-out defense. Often you don't have enough points for that because you want to do a counter charge, which is probably the most powerful command, but that's 2 points. So that's often half of your entire pool of points. So Bastion being able to give out all-out attack without spending command points is quite big and significant. So we've also pounced onto all the objectives, because in this particular mission, in this battle plan, let me just pull up the page for this. We were given pictures of all the battle plans so that we could actually play the game accurately. So this one is Border War. So this is quite similar to how Border War used to be, I think. So you score 1 victory point if you control the objective wholly within friendly territory, which is the back one. You control 2 for each objective that you hold on the centre line, and you take 5 points if you control the one in enemy territory. However, with objectives you're capped at 6 for scoring, and then you can get another 4 for a battle tactic. So you can get on every single objective, but you're capped at 6. So the most you can score in a round is 10. So you could get that easily if you can take the central one, or you can get just below 6, because you can only get 5 if you hold these 3. And importantly, denial of objectives is a big deal as well, because not only scoring yourself, but preventing the enemy from scoring. And you have more ways to do that now as well with the new way that redeploy works. Nukeman says, I like a decent bit of list building, it's where the game begins. You know what, I'm not sure how I feel about events where they always have the same points level. So Age of Sigmar events are always 2,000 points or 1,000 point doubles here. But you don't really see different lists. You could see this, you run into the same person at multiple events in a row and they have exactly the same list. Because the point level is the same. And if it works for them, why change it until the rules change in a few months' time, and then at that point everyone changes their list. But I'd like to see some more events run at a variety of point levels. I think that would be nice. You would see more list building variety then. So you can see that the Mournfang moved over here, but the Sharks used counter shoot to shoot the Mournfang, and because they damaged them, that also means that they are now -1 dice on their charge, which means they're not going to be able to make a charge there. So shooting with a command point in the enemy turn, big deal there. And over here you can see that a couple of Mournfang are in combat with these Chaos Warriors. So let's see where they were. So these two charge in there, kill a load of them, take a few wounds back, and away we go. 7 points. So we scored a battle tactic, we scored this one, and we scored that one. I don't think we scored this one because we're not on it. So 7 points for round 1. Into round 1 for the enemy of the Slaves to Darkness and the Deepkins. You can see there's some eels there, very, very nice, brightly coloured eels. So the Chaos Warriors just move out of combat. Now you can still do that, but you take damage when you retreat from combat now. So how many were there? 4. Yeah, so it looks like one of them died running away from combat. And the Chaos Leader is getting 3 inches away from the Mournfang. Not only can it charge them, it will also limit what they can do with a redeploy, because you still can't go within 3 inches. So if the eels wanted to charge the Mournfang and the Mournfang redeployed backwards, they can now no longer really do that because he's here. You also have to be careful, if you're going to charge, which enemy units are nearby, because counter-charging can be a big deal. So often you'll want to charge a chaff unit into an enemy unit that's really strong that you don't want to countercharge you, because it can't countercharge if it's been charged. So chaff is back, I would say, not just as a screen, but also to attack enemy units and just stop them countercharging. It used to be something that only really Khorne could do, I think, because they could do some sneaky movement in your turn, but now everyone can do it. Kahadeen says, I kind of like old AOS, it felt like it was more about on-table play than just your list. And this will be very much the same, this edition, especially with all the reactions. It's an extremely interactive game, but it's interactive in a very predictable way so that you can follow the flow and of the game very easily. Because in each phase, you'll do all your stuff, and then your opponent gets a chance to do their one reaction. Next phase, you do all your stuff, then your opponent gets their chance for one reaction. Next phase, the same. until you get to close combat, and then you alternate again, back and forth. So it's very straightforward, actually. And you don't have to worry about not paying attention to someone moving within 9 inches of you, for example. So it's more interactive, but you have to pay less attention at any given moment to intricate movements. You don't have to worry about the precise distance that you are away from things until they've finished all their movement. Then you can measure and decide if you want to redeploy. So it's way less fiddly, which I like a lot. So another Mournfang gets shot down by the Sharks, who are actually retreating now. And the other unit of Mournfang are still alive, but that one is actually down and toast. The enemy in the centre are not that eager to engage with Bastion and the Concussors, which might be a good idea. But Bastion does countercharge and goes after them. So, of course, anytime you're in range of countercharge, this is a risk. It was quite a long charge for him to make, but I thought, you know what, Bastion's so powerful. Against those 10 guys, he's probably going to kill quite a few. And then he heals 4 wounds whenever he kills a model as well. So he doesn't get all his health back anymore, but he does get 4 wounds back. And there's no more heroic recovery in the game, but everything can rally when it's out of combat now, which is 6 dice, and on a 4-up you get a wound back. Or if you roll enough successes so that it's a full model, you can bring a full model back. So with the Dracoths down to 5 wounds now, if one of them died and the other one hadn't taken any wounds, and you rolled 6 dice for the rally, you would have to get 5 4+s on those 6 dice to bring one back. So it's not that likely for a unit like that, but it's quite easy to bring back 1 or 2 wound models. So Bastion with the countercharge in the enemy turn to do some serious punishment. The Mournfang is getting stuck into the eels. Bastion murders most of those Chaos Warriors, so that's nice. And he takes a wound as well. But he's going to get it back because he's killed a model. And a nice upside down picture here. Oh yeah, at the Spiteful 16 event, not only do we get beautiful orange dice presented to us, they're orange this year because I won last year's Spiteful 16, so I got to choose the colour of the dice. So obviously I picked orange. We also get 1 golden dice that you can use to re-roll 1 dice roll over the course of the game. So you can see here that the golden dice was used, and I think that kept somebody alive. So the Mournfang are doing quite well in there at the moment. Bastion's doing well. And yeah, that was a very good turn for us, even though it was the enemy's turn. We did lose the Mournfang over here to the Sharks, but they just seem nasty. So I think we decide at this point we're going to start ignoring them. And you can see the Demon Prince ready to strike behind there. So these Knights are a threat, because if we charge everything in to the Chaos Warriors that are still alive here, there's a chance that the Chaos Knights would be in position to then countercharge whoever we've got here. So we have to be very careful what we're doing this turn. If we even go next, spoiler alert. So the enemy gets 7 points, just like us, and we do get the next turn. And if you take a double turn in this game, if you choose to take a double, then you can't score a battle tactic in that turn. But if the enemy give you a double, then you can. So it's an interesting dynamic. You can see that the Lord Veritant failed with his chanting roll, rolled a 1, so you lose prayer points then. So he actually lost most of them that he'd gained, so he's not doing any praying at the moment. Mournfang moving up. The Concussors, it turns out, are... let's see. Where were they? So Concussors go this way, because they want to get stuck in and kill the Chaos Hero. And over here, the Tempesters drop down, and they start shooting away at one of the Sharks, who then shoots back at them and does some wounds as well. The Mournfang charge in, they get into combat. The Concussors get in on the charge there into the Chaos Lord. And then they kill him, because the Concussors are just good now. Not only is it just their attack profile that's quite good, they did lose a point of rend on their hammers. They still do mortal wounds with them, and the Dracoth's bite and the claws didn't lose any rend. But they also shut down commands being used on a 3+. So that's really good, because you can stop the enemy from using all-out defense, which is nice. Bastion clears out the Chaos Warriors. The Mournfang do a good job there. And The eel is dead as well, so we've taken this objective. The Demon Prince. So, because Bastion killed all of the Chaos Warriors, then the Mournfang were then able to use their pile-in move to get into range to attack the Demon Prince. And they've... I think... Did he already have damage on him? He may have done. So, let's see. I don't know if the enemy just didn't have the command points to do a countercharge with the Chaos Knights, or whether they just didn't want to. But some damage dished out on either side there, and we're into combat. So, the enemy are in a tricky position in the middle now, because if the Chaos Knights charge into the Mournfang, unless they get a good roll and loop all the way around the back, they would have to tag Bastion then, which brings him into combat, which is a bad idea. But if you don't do that, he can then issue a countercharge in the next turn as well, if the enemy go next. Which they will do right now. So, at the moment, he could do a countercharge, and it's not very far to get to the little Deepkin hero there. So you would probably want to lock down Bastion, but what have you got that you can lock him down with? The Chaff unit is over there. They would be great at this job, just preventing the countercharge. So we score 10 points for that round, because we have now locked down the enemy juicy objective, which is worth 5. So we're scoring big, baby. Turn 2 for the enemy. The Sharks have moved on to an objective, and they want to try and kill the Tempesters. The other Shark over here wants to kill the Mournfang or the Concussors. And the Knights get into the Mournfang. The Deepkin hero on the Seahorse charges into the Tempester, who's remaining after the shooting. I think he's only got 1 wound left as well, after all the shooting. The other Shark into the Concussors, which might not be wise. And then Bastion with another countercharge. So it's worth spending 2 points a turn just to get Bastion countercharging into the enemy, because he is a beast. So he's going to try and dish out some pain. And over here you can see that... Who was there? The 2 Mournfang are killed by the Chaos Knights. The Tempester is killed over there. Bastion has taken a wound. The Concussors have killed the Shark, which is quite funny, because the Shark is actually good in combat, and it was fairly confident actually going into that combat. But because they wanted to attack with something else first, then the Concussors were able to go first on this area of the table, and they just whomped the Shark to death. So our opponents pick up 7 points, so we've got a lead now. Now, if you are the underdog, you do get an extra command point in each round, and often the battle plans will have an extra rule for if there's an underdog. So, for example, if you're the underdog, you might have a different way you can interact with the objectives. So we get the next round as well, which is good. And I think it's going to be maybe not a full-on mopping up operation, but it's not far off now. You can see, I think we choose a battle tactic of killing an enemy hero, and this one decides to just teleport away using a command counterspell, a command point to counterspell and teleport, which is a good move. So now we're going to have to chase that hero down if we want to kill it. I bring down the prosecutors and throw them into combat with the Knights. The reason for that is the Knights are not currently in combat, so I don't want them doing a countercharge and joining in the fight with the Tyrant and Bastion. Whereas, as it stands now, we can try and kill the Demon Prince and then pile into range to punch the Knights afterwards. So at the moment, the Knights mostly are stuck on the prosecutors, and even if they activate after, for example, Bastion hits the Demon Prince, then they wouldn't be able to get many of them in range to hit the Tyrant. So the prosecutors have been waiting patiently in the sky, and they feel like this is a time to come down. They may just be a bit of a chaff unit right now, but that's the job they're taking on. We find out at this point that the Concussors are actually stuck in combat because of this one Chaos Warrior. You can see the Lord Veritan is generating more prayer points, or PP as I've been calling them, so he's up to 3 PP now. The Demon Prince takes some more wounds, and then gets killed to death by the Tyrant. The Mournfang on this side gets killed. The Knights start piling in, kill a Prosecutor. The Concussors kill the Chaos Warriors over on this side, and they're doing great work so far. And a couple of the Knights have gone down as well. I think the Prosecutor that was remaining did some good work, and another 10 points because we're still holding this top objective, which is worth 5, and it must have been a different battle tactic we picked this time, because obviously this hero is teleported away. So unless we just hold... No, I don't think we hold all the objectives. So what you're seeing here, because I'm not on the objective there, and you might wonder why, because this thing here is when the Slaves to Darkness decide to befoul one of the objectives. I can't remember what the term was. They ruin it or desecrate it or something, and then if you're on it, you can take mortal wounds from it then. So that's quite a scary ability. So it's obviously going very well for the Stormcast and the Ogres at the moment. And the enemy don't get a huge amount accomplished in that turn. They're mostly just spreading out trying to score. There's a shark moving around, touching objectives, not doing a whole lot. So they do score 7, so they're keeping in touch. But the lead is being built now. So, I think... What do we go for here? I can't remember which battle tactic we chose every round. So what I like to do is, when I've got cards for the battle tactics, is take a picture of the one that we're using in each round. But people aren't intimately familiar with all the battle tactics yet anyway. So, you can destroy faction terrain quite easily now. You can just attack it if you want. But I don't think the Lord Veritant is going to be able to destroy this Shrine of Chaos. But he does teleport over there using translocation because he generated enough PP to do so. And Bastion and the Tyrant are quite happily hanging out there. Yes, destroying faction terrain is very useful because if you think about, for example, Gits, they use their Loon Shrine to bring units back to life. If you can destroy that, that's a big deal. If you can destroy, like, Wildwoods, that's going to be handy. I'm thinking of other faction terrain that has a really powerful purpose. The Skaven Gnorholes. So, we score big again, 10 points, because we have table dominance here. We're controlling this objective, which is worth 5 every round, and we're preventing the enemy from scoring big on ours. So, we're just doing well. I can't remember which battle tactic we chose this round. And so into the opposition round 4. Now, I pay a command point to do a prayer on the opposing turn and teleport the Lord Veritant onto this objective. Because now that means that one shark, for example, dipping its toe onto the objective might not be enough to take it off us anymore. And we've got a Tempester on here, which I think was a redeploy move to touch this objective, which is going to mess up the enemy's plans as well. And over here, I think these two are going to try and charge, and they do get in. So they probably will take this objective after all, but because they moved away from the Tempester, then he was able to then redeploy, get a toe on the objective, and stop them taking this one. So that's going to reduce the number of points they get. And there's some wounds being dished out. The Ogre Butcher does get killed, but the Veritant is still alive. Not enough to stop them taking it, they've got a higher control score. But this one's still doing fine. So they do score 10 for that round, I think. So let's see how they scored 10. So they've got 5 there. They've got this one. Okay, yes, that one would be worth 2. And then they've got the battle tactic as well. So they do score 10, but it's a bit too little too late for them, sadly. Let's see. Nuke says, is morale, leadership, courage still a thing? No, you don't have to take battle shock tests anymore. That does not exist in any way. So you don't have to keep track of that. You don't have to worry about your models just running away off the table. So I think that's a good move because people were still confused about how to calculate it even after all this time. So I'm glad that's gone. And it was just a feel-bad moment. If you're... Let's see, what would be an annoying unit to have one run away? If you're running a unit of 4 Fulminators, for example, and there was one left, and then you go and roll a 6 and another one dies, that just feels bad. So I'm glad that's gone. And I think the changes to Rally make it less ridiculously powerful as well. So I like that. I don't like the fact that so many armies can bring things back to life. Because even Stormcast now, it used to be that you could bring a unit of Liberators or another Redeemer unit back to life. Now, it's any unit that's 2 or more models, you can spend 1 command point to bring it back to life at half strength anywhere on the table. So if you take a unit of 4 concussors, you can bring 2 of them back to life for 1 command point anywhere on the table. That sounds very powerful, but other factions have way more ability to bring back their models after they've been killed. So I think there's still too much of that in the game. Other than that, I'm happy though. Rally has been toned down, which I'm pleased about. So the enemy do get the first crack at round 5 though, so they're going to be able to try and score some points. And just spreading out onto objectives and trying to go for a long charge on Bastion. But the Tyrant actually redeploys away behind Bastion because that's going to make it a more difficult charge. And we've got a Shark into the Lord Veritant still. And Bastion does get killed by a Seahorse. That's embarrassing. So on that basis, the enemy are able to pick up some points for the round. Lord Veritant survives, so they pick up 6 for the round, which is fine. And I think, because... Did they take a double turn there? They may well have done. So if they did, that would be why they haven't scored a battle tactic. So, in the Stormcast and Ogre, turn 5, we spread out to the table edges. If you just get a unit within 6 inches of the short table edges on both sides, not in your own territory, then you can score a battle tactic there, so we're able to score the maximum, I think, in that round, or did I not take a picture of that yet? But yeah, because we've got this one because the Ogre Tyrant just kicks some butt there, and we've got 9 points this round, because we own the 5-point objective and a battle tactic, so 9 points. So no more grand strategies, they don't exist anymore, so that is your final score. So, a nice win for the Stormcast there, and we got to see the power of Bastion just whomping his way through units. We got to see the power of the Concussors whomping their way through units and shutting down commands, which is really nice. Let's see, John F. just ordered General's Handbook and Slaves to Darkness cards. Is that the General's Handbook and Slaves to Darkness cards that are about to become obsolete in a few days? Surely they must be, because I don't think you can order... Yeah, it's not even a General's Handbook available at the moment. So yeah, I think those are about to become obsolete, John. New versions. Oh, okay, then you're alright. Never mind, that's fine. You can pre-order the new cards already. So I think with the... Ooh, nice. So the Stormcast cards, I feel like they're going to have their Battle Tome early. At which point, presumably, they'll get new cards. Will they? So does that mean they're going to bring them out again with different cards, or are they going to have the same cards re-released, or is this going to be the only time you can get Stormcast cards? So I'm probably just going to print my own out, and then wait and see if they get more with the new Battle Tome. So I'll hold out on that. Is the General's Handbook actually in book form if you order it? Because I know you get the General's Handbook cards in the starter box. Do you actually get it as a book if you order it? So if they do re-release them with the updates and it's the same ones, then that's fine. Because otherwise people would just have a month or two of using cards and then they're obsolete. That would be really weird. You get the book if you order. Yeah, that's nice then. The General's Handbook is one of the things I really like about Age of Sigmar as a concept. So you can keep up with the rules with just one small purchase every either 6 months or a year, and it freshens up the game and keeps it nice and exciting. Which is something that other game systems should learn from, I think. Now, on the one hand, it's hardest to keep up with it. I can accept that. So if you only go to very infrequent events, it is a lot to keep up with. On the other hand, it's only one small purchase, which is a book, which keeps you up to date. And it doesn't drastically change the core rules. It just gives you new missions, maybe a new twist so that certain other units are brought into fashion. Like in the last edition, you had a particular season where infantry became useful suddenly. There was another one where heroes became really good. Foot heroes, that is. So models that you've got that you haven't been using for a while get a good 6 months to a year before they're out of favour again. So it just keeps things nice and fresh, and I like that way of doing things. I do also kind of like the way Kings of War do it, which is do a once per year update book that updates the various points and a couple of tweaks to the units. And do they actually change the points in Kings of War? Is it just the unit profiles they change rather than the points? Yeah, they do add like options, or they'll add a formation, so units come back into fashion that way in Kings of War. They'll say like, this is the magnificent expedition party, and it's like 2 units of cavalry and a hero, and they all gain this special rule if you take them together. So they do it that way. Yeah, so I do like games that update the rules every now and then to keep things fresh. Age of Sigmar is definitely one of the front runners in that category. They keep it very fresh. So the next battle plan, let me have a look at my phone here and tell you about that. So we just did Border War. The next one is, I think this one is shifting objectives. So your deployment area is off slightly in one corner, so you can't deploy all the way across. You've got one little bit locked out. 3 objectives in the centre, and let's see. Okay, this is where underdog comes in. So at the start of each round, you roll a dice of some kind to pick which of these 3 objectives becomes the primary objective, which is worth more points. If you're the underdog, meaning if you have less points going into that round, you can choose to re-roll that dice. So if it doesn't land on one you like, you get another chance. So it's more likely, if you're the underdog, that the primary objective will be in a position that you want it to be in. So that's an example of the kind of underdog bonus you can get. And the scoring in this one, you get 1 victory point for each secondary objective you control, and 2 for the primary. And you also score 2 if you control more than your opponent. So you can get up to 6 and then 4 for your battle tactic. And in this one, who have I brought in this list then? So Bastion's out, trying out Yndrasta this time because the enemy has monsters. A couple of them. And she does double damage with her spear against monsters, so we're going to give her a try. The long strikes have come in as well. Even though they've got short range now, they can also occasionally teleport as well, which is really nice. Yndrasta does seem great, but so does Bastion. So Lord Veritant stays in, see if he can do some prayers. Prosecutors stay in. And I've taken out the Tempesters for the long strikes to come in, so we'll see if they do a good job. So, what have we got on the enemy side? Well, you can see that it's ogres, and this is the benefactor of the event, who comes over from Canada, Mr. Francois. This is his army. And his ogres are actually built to represent players from the community who have attended these events. So there is actually an Andy in there at the back. So you can see wearing orange with the long hair and the facial hair, and obviously very reminiscent of me. There's also a Rem in there somewhere. It could be this one here. I've got some good pictures of the Rem and the Andy models at the end to show you. Yes, orange is definitely my colour. I wear a lot of orange, and I chose the orange dice for this event as well. There is also an Annie in there, which has guinea pigs on the base. She's been to one of the Spiteful 16 events. And anyone else who plays, there's a chance that you'll be immortalised in ogre form. So we've got, in the ogre army, we've got a couple of heroes on foot. We've got some Iron Guts, and what are the other ones called? Gluttons, are they? The standard ogres? And Cruel Boys. So there is Gobsprat. Is it Gobsprak? There is a Sludge Raker. There is a Marsh Crawler, Slogoth. There are some... What are the regular Cruel Boys called? I can't remember now. But there are some Hobgrots as well. And so the Cruel Boys now, they have dirty tricks, which means that they can do some sneaky thing in each phase on a roll, but the more of them they do in each turn, the more difficult it gets. So if they wait until the combat phase to do a sneaky trick, then it's quite easy to do. But if you've been using them all the way through the turn, then by the time you get to the combat phase, you're likely to fail that one. So there's just sneaky different things they can do, like encrusting their weapons, and I can't remember all of them, but very sneaky things they do. So into the first round, and this one on the left becomes the primary objective with the token in the middle of it. And so this token here is representing Finest Hour, which is the thing that Stormcast have now, instead of everyone. They can put it on any unit once per game, so each unit, should I say, can use it throughout the game once. So it can be used on the entire army once. It only lasts into your own turn, though. It doesn't go into the enemy turn. So I've got it on the prosecutors here. I don't think it's really going to do anything, but I felt like putting it on them to give them extra armor in case the enemy had any shoot reactions they could do against them, because they're dipping their toe onto an objective. So it would give them +1 armor save. Then you can see that we've got 2 units within range of the center. That's because we've gone for that objective, at that battle tactic at the start, to have 2 units in range of the center of the table. And there's 1 unit here and 1 unit there alongside each other. So we pick up 8 points, which I think, yeah, because we hold this one as well. So I think we actually didn't play this scenario correctly. I think you're supposed to, yeah, because I don't think we did the pickup points for having more than the enemy. So whoever read out the battle plan just read it out wrong. So I think we've capped it at 8 for this mission, but actually it should be 10. So we do that consistently throughout the game, though, so no one's being cheated out of it. What's that? It looks like some kind of endless spell, and another one. So that's the big jaws, and I can't remember what this other one's called. But they're quite nasty now. And endless spells, you can fight them in combat. They can go into combat, some of them can. So they're very interesting and interactive. Gobsprak moves up onto the primary objective. We've got a load of ogres going after the Mournfang. And look at that spectacular army there. Mournfang taking some wounds from shooting. The long strikes do a reaction shot, a counter shot. You can see here that with a bit of a sneaky teleportation move, which I think is one of the sneaky tricks they can do. This unit here has teleported across the table to behind our lines, and then we've got a huge blob of ogres, which I think are the Iron Guts, and they've gone into the 2 Mournfang units there. And the Endless Spell plows in as well. Gobsprak and the Hobgrots have gone after the prosecutors. Now, Yndrasta is currently in the sky. She would like to fight this Gobsprak, because she can come down, shoot it, then charge it and try and kill it. But if the Hobgrots are in the way, she might struggle, because when she comes down 9 inches away, that could redeploy away from her, and then she would have a really long path to actually reach it. So she wants there to be nice open spaces. Some of these ogres here have jumped onto the objective. Now, if you see any particular units diving onto an objective when the enemy are nearby, even if they're thinking of not charging, then keep in mind that one side may have run out of command points and don't have enough for a countercharge, which is why you would maybe feel safe doing that. So lots of Mournfang wiped out there, which is very sad. Gobsprak and the Hobgrots kill some prosecutors, and yeah, they're all dead. So you can see some armor saves being rolled there, but not enough, and they are toast. So prosecutors are dead, and yes, time to get some sweet, sweet vengeance for that, because we've lost some stuff now. We've lost quite a few Mournfang. Perfidy says, is redeploy within 9 inches? If so, it might be sensible to yell. No, it is not dependent on how far away from the enemy you are anymore. So it's just after the enemy has completed all their moves, you can then move one of your units for a cost of 1 command point, d6 inches. So there's no worrying about accidentally setting off redeploy. So you can still surround the enemy to prevent them redeploying very far, but it's not locked to how far away you are. So you can land on both sides of an enemy, or you can land in range of 2 enemies, which means that they can't both redeploy. So who's going to get turn 2? This one stays as the primary objective that Gobsprak is on, so that's great for the Cruel Boys and the Ogres. But we get the second round, so what can we do about this? Oh, at this point we realise that my teammate has been playing a few points down. So we bring on some, what are they called? Saber Tusks. Just didn't realise that he didn't have enough points in the list, so they are now on the table. Mournfang heading off around the sides. They can charge into this unit here. I think for our battle tactic, we've chosen to kill this unit of ogres. So we're going to send loads of Mournfang into them and the Tyrant. I've brought down my Concussors and Yndrasta behind the Sludge Raker and the Marsh Crawler, because that's a monster, and Yndrasta can throw her spear at that and do some good damage. And if it redeploys away, that's okay, because we've got other things to kill here anyway. So, here's possibly a tactical mistake that we make, because obviously everyone's new to this edition. All the Mournfang and the Ogre Tyrant go in there. However, oh yeah, Yndrasta and the Concussors all get into combat as well, which is nice. But, because, let's see, because we don't throw anyone into combat with the big Ogre unit in the middle, they countercharge and they roll far enough to reach the Tyrant. So they're in combat now as well, so this is not looking too good anymore. So Yndrasta does some decent damage to the Sludge Raker. And loads of the Mournfang get killed because these ogres just hit really hard. And one thing I'd heard about this edition is that they're taking away a lot of rend, and armor saves are going to be more impactful. However, these ogres seem to have 1 million attacks each, loads of rend, loads of damage. It was like facing something in 3rd edition. Whenever I feel like Stormcast are really powerful, and I send them into combat with something, and then my opponent says, oh yeah, so I've got 5 attacks each, and it's 2s and 2s, -3 rend, 3 damage. And I'm thinking, the unit doesn't look that powerful. And this is how this unit, I think, made me feel in this game. Like, it just seems a really, really strong unit. They've got buffs on them. I think they had a +1 attack buff. But just very, very strong, big blob of ogres. Which is fine. It feels, if a unit is going to be powerful, you would think it should be ogres at punching things in the face. That's what they're good at. But they go straight through the Mournfang there. And the Sludge Raker is taking quite a bit of damage, because one of the Concussors moves into range to attack it as well. So piling in, you can't get any further away from a unit, and you can't take a unit out of combat with you. So you can pile in around and then get to within 3 to punch a different unit though. So the Sludge Raker does get killed, which is great. So Sludgy Boy is dead, as I was calling him throughout the game. However, 0 points, because we don't hold any objectives, and we didn't kill the unit that we were supposed to for our battle tactics, so we don't score anything, which is horrendously sad. Going into the next round, you will see that... Where are we? So, this one here, is this the centre objective here? I'm trying to see which one becomes the primary. We'll get an idea on the wide shot. So the enemy are going next by the looks of it. And they end up killing Yndrasta with this. I think this is a Warcry warband and the Marsh Crawler. So Yndrasta dies, which is very sad, but she did take down a monster with her, so that's okay. We've got all this mess that came in and murdered the Ogre Butcher who was hiding with the pot. And the Concussors kill a load of the Hobgrots, I think there. Were there any Hobgrots left? No, it was the Marsh Crawler. Hobgrots are somewhere else. So yeah, there's the Hobgrots. So they kill the Ogre Butcher and they're towing on objectives and they're just scoring big, sadly. So they get 8. So remember, because we're playing this slightly wrong, we're capping it at 8 this game. And then the enemy choose to take the double. So if you take the double, you can't score a battle tactic. But the enemy, looking at this situation, realise, actually, if we take the double, we could just table them. So we might as well take it now and kill everything. So they choose to do that, get into the Lord Veritant, kill him. And they only score 4 points, but they do kill most things. We've got 2 long strikes left for our turn. And we score 8 points by getting on an objective, because there's not much else we can do right now. And then the enemy are just running amok. We've only got very little left, if anything. I think the long strikes did get killed, and we did get tabled, but then they came back to life with the command points. They were able to score something for us. And we'll whiz through, because the enemy destroy the Moor Pot, pick up loads more points, and look at that. So, very disappointing, and the reason that game horribly turned is because we allowed that massive powerful ogre unit in the middle to countercharge. If the long strikes had charged into them, the long strikes would have obviously died, but they would have helped us secure our battle tactic, because the 2 units of Mournfang could have possibly killed that ogre unit, got the battle tactic, taken the objective off them, and that would have been a big change. We wouldn't have lost all the Mournfang instantly. So that was quite a big deal. So it turned on not screening out a powerful unit when countercharge was coming up. We were just relying on them failing the charge roll, which was not obviously successful. So you can see how big of a deal countercharge is, and it's been a defining factor of all the games so far. I feel like people will incorporate more chaff and throwaway units into their lists as time goes on, as they realise how potent countercharge is. I can see why it costs 2 command points, because it is really good. If you've got a really strong combat unit that you keep just behind your lines or just off an objective, and the enemy charge the thing in front or the thing on the objective, if they don't have anything to chaff up your powerful unit with and you countercharge, you're getting much more value out of your extremely powerful units from fighting in more turns despite your opponent not choosing to engage you. So I think extremely cheap chaff units could become a thing. So for Stormcast, Ether Wings, could they be the future? Take some Ether Wings into every game, and then when you only want to engage one enemy unit, send the Ether Wings to charge the other unit so that it can't countercharge into the thing you want to protect. So you're paying for a chaff unit, what are you paying? About 70 points. So you're paying a 70-point tax to keep an enemy unit that's very powerful from countercharging you for a turn. So that's going to be a really interesting dynamic going forward for the game, I think, where the list composition starts to change and we see more chaff. Because in 3rd edition we saw chaff, but we mostly saw it as really big screens to screen off teleports and deep striking. So I think we could see more minimum sized cheap chaff units purely for denying countercharge. So in this game we're up against the Seraphon and Stormcast Eternals. And what is this battle plan? Let me have a look at the picture. So this one, we've just done shifting objectives. This one is Feral Foray. So there are 6 objectives you can see. If you haven't noticed, by the way, the objectives are smaller in this edition, which I'm liking actually. Especially now you have more options to shut down objectives by redeploying and countercharging. So the fact that you've got more movement in your opponent's turn, but the objectives are smaller, I think that balances it a bit. So it's not so guaranteed for you to get to the next objective along, like it would be if they were still huge areas. So this one, 6 objectives, but the twist is that you can raid an objective and turn it off for a turn if it's one that you're controlling in your opponent's half. So if you jump onto an objective, and then in the next turn you switch it off and then run away, so the enemy can't score it. If you think that you can only take it for 1 turn and then they'll immediately take it back, then it's a good way of stopping them scoring. And if you're the underdog, then you can turn off objectives just by contesting them rather than controlling them. So that's quite a nice underdog bonus as well. So you can only interact with the scenario in that way if you're in the enemy half. So who have we got on our list this time? You'll notice we've got a couple of Stonehorns. So some of the Mournfang have come out of the list. 2 Stonehorns in. We've still got the Tyrant and the Butcher. We've got the Concussors. We've got the Veritant. We've got the Long Strikes. And off the table, we've got Yndrasta and the Prosecutors. So I think it's the same list as the last game. So game 4, I do change up the list again. So there is a Bastillodon, there is a Carnosaur, there's a Knight Arcanum from the Stormcast, there's 3 Paladors, there's another Bastillodon, there are 3 Croxigor, there are some Saurus Warriors, and there's Yndrasta. So we've got a Yndrasta off. 2 Yndrastas, 1 on each side. So all her life, Yndrasta was told how special and powerful she is, and unique, and now she finds out there's just another one in the same battle. Off the table, the enemy have Gardas and 2 units of Annihilators. So the way Gardas works now is very interesting. So, previously he gave a 5-up ward to all the nearby units, which is a very passive ability, and encouraged you to be a bit conservative with him, because if he dies, suddenly the ward is gone. Now, keeping in the theme of what they seem to be going for, which is they want your heroes to be in the middle of the action, not just hanging back passively buffing things, then Gardas only grants a ward save to nearby units if he charges that turn. So that is a huge change for Gardas. He has a 5+ ward save of his own, naturally. He also, just to double down on what they want you to use him for, when when a friendly unit is wholly within 6 inches of him, then he can pick, I think it's once per game, he can pick up to 3 of those units to be +1 to charge. So, if we look at the combo of Gardas Steel Soul, the Lord Imperatant, and maybe 2 units of Annihilators. The Annihilators have to drop down 9 inches away from the enemy now. You can't drop down 7 inches away anymore. But if you drop down Gardas Steel Soul and the Lord Imperatant right next to them, then the Lord Imperatant can move up to 3 units d3 inches after they drop down. So you can potentially get to 6 inches away from the enemy. So sometimes it'll be even better than it used to be. Other times you'll be 8, other times 7 inches away. And that's 3 units he can do that to. And then Gardas gives them all +1 to charge. So that seems like a really nice combo. 2 units of Annihilators, Gardas and the Lord Imperatant all coming down together. Because the Imperatant has to be close to those units to use his buff now. It used to be the Imperatant would just hide in the corner and never participate in the game, because as soon as he dies you can no longer land a unit of Annihilators 7 inches away from the enemy, so they would hone in on him if the Annihilators hadn't come in yet and kill him, and then they're nowhere near as good. So you drop all these units down together and they've got really good synergy that's aggressive, and it feels like that's how they were meant to be played, but they were just designed way too passively in the previous edition, so I really like that. But the Imperatant is not in the enemy list in this game. So the enemy are getting the first crack at turn 1, and the Knight Arcanum has the... what is this little platform called? I can't remember, but it lets you do an extra cast when you're on it. And the Bastiladon. Okay, let me talk about the 2 Bastiladons. So they have a really good save, and the Seraphon seem to have escaped the buff to save stacking. So most armies now have way less abilities to boost up their save outside of all-out defense. The Seraphon seem to have retained lots of theirs. So I think they get +1 to save just from being on their own half of the table at times. I don't know if that's like a sub-faction or whether that's just certain units, but a lot of them seem to do that. And some of the units get +1 to save for contesting objectives as well. So yeah, the Seraphon have amazing saves now. And they also have some of their monsters, some of their big stuff can be ethereal, so that they just have a 4-up save that can't be modified in any way. So that's also really good. Less good if you're being attacked by a million skeletons, but really good if you're being attacked by a small number of higher end attacks. So I think the enemy went for the put 2 units into the centre, and we decided we're not going to try and deny it by charging anything into combat, because it would probably die. So I think that's the combat Bastiladon, and the one with the big crystal on top is the shooty one. So they're very tough to kill is what I was getting at. So a Concussor has taken some wounds, which is probably from the Bastiladon shooting attacks. And 10 points picked up for the enemy, so they're on quite a few objectives. Now, this is where we made a mistake, I think, because they score for being on more objectives than us because we didn't deploy anyone on this objective. So I'm going to put that down as a mistake, and that's something to learn from. And if we hadn't been on that, they would have scored less, or they would have had to come to us and then got killed, possibly. So, turn 1, what are we going to do? Well, Yndrasta and the Prosecutors are going to drop down and try and kill this Bastiladon. So Yndrasta obviously double damage against monsters, but we're about to find out about the save situation for this thing. The Concussors and the Stonehorn are going after the enemy monsters as well. We've got a Carnosaur right there. So we're going to go in, try and kill the big monsters immediately and just take them out of the equation. The long strikes move up, and you can see I've used Finest Hour on them to get +1 to wound on their shooting, which is good. And 8 damage from Yndrasta's spear into the Bastiladon. So that's just one shot that does 8 damage to monsters. So that weapon is amazing when it hits and wounds. And I think I used my golden dice. If anyone's just joining us, the golden dice is a once per game reroll you can use, so I think I had to use that because I think I rolled a 1 to wound, so I rerolled that, did the wound, it failed its save, took 8 wounds, so that's amazing. Yndrasta charges into the Bastiladon, the Concussors and one of the Stonehorn get into the Carnosaur, and the Prosecutors get into the Knight Arcanum there, and the Paladors are in combat with this Stonehorn as well. Now, who is a risk of countercharging us here? I would say this other Bastiladon. But it doesn't look like it has joined in. So, the Concussors, I wanted to use them to strike first because they can do mortal wounds. And that would cut through the save of the Bastiladon nicely. However, it's been left, and Yndrasta actually. So the Concussors, because they charged, and because they are part of the Extremist Chamber, then 1 unit per turn. On a 3+, they can strike first. So, they were able to do that. So they were able to strike first, took some wounds off the Bastiladon and the Carnosaur. Yndrasta then went next, because strike first happens before the regular you go, I go sequence. So Yndrasta then piles in and fights. The Bastiladon has 2 wounds left, because it made some very impressive saves. And the Carnosaur took some wounds as well. So that's a bit sad, because then Yndrasta gets killed by the Carnosaur in one go. Wow, wow, wow. So she's dead, and a Prosecutor's dead. And some damage being dished out to the Stonehorns, but we do kill the Carnosaur. I think the Stonehorn finishes it off. But not the Bastiladon. So it's got 12 wounds dealt to it. The Knight Arcanum kills the Prosecutors though, which is quite funny, and doesn't give me great Prosecutor confidence. But we do clear out everything else from this area, the Paladors. So we score 10 as well. Who's going to go next? It's the enemy. So the Knight Arcanum, you can see, has got a +1 save going on. They use a command point to bring back a unit at half strength, rounding up, so it's the Paladors, and they come in behind our lines. So I'm going to probably use a reaction shot with the long strikes to shoot them, a counter shoot ability. Both units of Annihilators and Gardas come down, ready to go after the Stonehorns, which is quite scary. And when they land, they do some mortal wound splash damage. The enemy Yndrasta moves forward and claims this hill, which is their battle tactic for the turn, which we could try and deny by redeploying this Ogre Tyrant over there. A wound is dished out from the Paladors onto the long strikes, who then fire back with a counter shot, which costs us 1 command point, and they kill one of the Paladors. Gardas makes a successful charge into the Stonehorn, but both units of Annihilators fail their own charges, which is very sad for them. So Gardas gets stuck in on his own. A Concussor goes down to the Bastiladon, and the other Bastiladon is in the fight now as well. So we've got lots of big monster battles going on there. And one of the Stonehorn goes down. The other one piles in. Now we find out later that this is actually not legal, because it was in combat with Gardas. You are not allowed to pile in and take a unit out of combat with you. So that's a shenanigan that you used to be able to do a lot in the last edition. You can't do that anymore. So this is not a legal move, but we didn't know that at the time until later. So you can pile in, and this the monstrous rampage that this Stonehorn has doesn't work like monstrous rampages did before. They just have a rampage ability, and it's when it piles in, it can pile in an extra d6. That's how it's gone so far, but it shouldn't really be able to do it because Gardas is there, so it's not allowed to pile in away from him. We do kill the Bastiladon though, so we've got rid of some big monsters. And this one is a big threat though, still alive. The enemy score 8 points for the round. So we've kept them away from some of the objectives. They don't have this one or this one because the Ogre Tyrant is worth more than Yndrasta. So they don't have these 3. And into Stormcast and Ogre turn. So this hill is what we're going to try and claim in this turn. Just copying the enemy battle tactic there. So my long strikes are teleported away, and the Lord Veritant is going to try and kill this last Palador. Long strikes are teleported up there so they can start shooting down Annihilators. The Stonehorn moves to here, and it's going to try and make a long charge into the Knight Arcanum, I think. Long strikes do some damage to one Annihilator, but not much, sadly. And the Stonehorn makes a charge into the Bastillodon. What it would like to do is to pile in and bring him into combat, but as we now know, you wouldn't be able to do that because Gardas is there. Yndrasta is charged by the Ogre Tyrant, and the Mournfang are making their way in this direction as well. They have had some ability cast on them. I think it was a spell that means they charge with 1 dice, so they're not going to be able to make that charge. The Lord Veritant gets into the last Palador, and the Annihilators at the top make a counter charge against the Stonehorn. So they make it in, and the Stonehorn eats them, which is nice. Lord Veritant does a wound to the Palador. Wounds are dished out onto the Stonehorn from the Bastillodon. The Bastillodon with all the snakes on it is really dangerous in combat. I think it's got like 20 attacks, and if it rolls 6s, it does mortal damage. So that's really good. Yndrasta takes some wounds. The Tyrant takes some wounds from each other. Lord Veritant takes a couple of wounds as well. And we managed to score 10 points for the round. So, big scoring. These Ogre units are really valuable for scoring on objectives. They're worth a lot. They have a high control value. So, we then decide to take the double. So we can't do a battle tactic, but we can kill loads of stuff. Because we feel like if we don't go next, what's going to happen? The Bastillodon is going to finish off the Stonehorn. Yndrasta could potentially kill the Tyrant that might not have support. We could do a counter charge there maybe, but she could fly away possibly. I think she's still got enough wounds left to not worry too much about that. There's all these lizards still alive. And I feel like the Annihilators would be heading this way towards the long strikes. They'd get onto objectives quite easily. We wouldn't be able to do much about it. Gardas is there. I think they would score better than we would. So we decided to take the turn and try and kill stuff, because it's not looking great. We've killed some big monsters, but we've also lost a lot, sadly. I don't have much left. I've only got the long strikes. So, I can also bring back 1 Concussor at some point for a command point. So we go next. And we're going to throw everything into Yndrasta on this side. This objective has been shut off, which is what that interesting token represents. And we shut off the objective with... because the Stonehorn has only got a few wounds left, we turn off this objective because we know we're not going to hold it much longer. The Veritant fails to get any prayer points again. No more PP for him. He's not doing very well with that. I bring down a Concussor on this objective to stop the enemy just towing on it with a 1 model and taking it. And the long strikes are going to do some shooting. Kill an Annihilator, which is good. Yndrasta gets everyone smashed into her. And combat rages on. Yndrasta kills the Tyrant. And yeah, this combat rages on between the Veritant and the Palador, failing to kill each other. And the Stonehorn dies. So it's a good job we turned off that objective, because that's not going to be ours ever again. And Yndrasta is still alive, sadly. We didn't manage to kill her. So we pick up 6 points for objectives, but we didn't do a battle tactic because we took a double. So our opponents are able to pick up battle tactic. So what are they going to do? Well, we use reactions in this round quite a bit. So the long strikes, they use a reaction shot. Actually, it's not happened yet. Now it has. So they kill another Annihilator with a counter shot, which is nice. The Bastillodon makes a charge into enemy faction terrain. I don't think this guy is actually part of the army, by the way. He's just under there for decoration in this list. But the reason my Concussor is now in danger is because the Bastillodon was able to declare a charge against faction terrain, which is a thing you can do now, which I forgot. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have put him in this position, because he's probably going to get eaten now. So he takes some wounds to shooting. Another Mournfang Cavalry is dead. Another wound on the Palador. And you can see that the Bastillodon takes a wound, but kills the Concussor. This fight is continuing between the Veritant and the Palador, and Mournfang and Yndrasta still going at it over there. So, not looking great. These Saurus warriors haven't moved off there all game. The Kroxigor haven't got involved in the game, and we're still down on numbers severely. The enemy only scores 6 as well. So, we're still slightly in the lead, but our opponents do get to go next, which means they're not going to be able to choose a battle tactic because they have taken a double. The Bastiladon is towing on this objective, but being a threat over here. So the Bastiladon's rampage it can use just does mortal wounds to several nearby units. So you do still have mortal wound output available, it's just not very frequent in lists, and it's shorter range than it used to be. So, upon checking that the hill does not block line of sight, which we find out that the intention is that it doesn't, the long strikes redeploy away from the advancing Gardas and the Annihilator, and then they use a counter shot to kill the final Annihilator. So 2 command points used there on the long strikes, but a good job. They also were able to put a shot or 2 into Gardas and did some wounds to him, which is good. Because he hadn't taken any yet, so now he's taken 3, or he's got 3 left. Bastiladon gets onto this objective, and then Lord Veritant is killed. The Kroxigor get into combat with the Mournfang and kill that. So our opponents pick up another 6 points. They couldn't get more because they took the double, so they couldn't do a battle tactic. Into our turn 4. The only battle tactic we can think of that the long strikes can do on their own is kill an enemy hero in combat. You might think that is complete madness, and I would agree with you. So the long strikes move up onto the hill. Gardas redeploys a little bit away from them. They then shoot Gardas, do some damage to him, then make a 10-inch charge into Gardas, and do the last wound in combat. Long strikes killed Gardas Steel Soul in combat and secured a battle tactic and an objective. Let that sink in. So these long strikes are definitely the MVPs here. And with that we're able to pick up 6 points for our turn, because we only hold this point here. And do we hold another point? I don't know. Okay, in the next turn, we go first in round 5, and the long strikes teleport onto this objective. There is a redeploy from the Sauruses, I think, which stretches them out to try and touch that one. Or no, I think they actually just or they ran to get there. And remember, long strikes can now run and shoot. So they ran to get there rather than teleport, because the Sauruses stretched out so they couldn't teleport onto the edge. So they just ran there and then do a bit of shooting, clear some out, which is good. And then they decide to charge the Sauruses as well, which is hilarious. And the reason they do that is because these Sauruses didn't actually get here as a redeploy. They moved their last turn, I think. So, if I didn't shoot them, they could countercharge and get loads of models on the objective. So, when I charge them, I go right up to this line, which means that when they pile in, they won't be able to get onto the objective. So that's the thinking there. So I do hold the objective, managed to get 4 points for that round. Can't remember what the battle tactic was, or whether there was even one. I don't think there was. And Sauruses surround the long strikes, and one of them survives the game, so we don't even get tabled, but the enemy are able to score big at the end with the final turn, because we've got nothing left other than a long strike. Yeah, that's right, the enemy have got these Sauruses, a Bastiladon, a Palador, and 3 Kroxigor. So, yeah, that's a tough one. The monsters didn't go down fast enough, and we found out about the very, very tough to crack Bastiladon. That is a very strong unit. I have a feeling that's going to be quite a lot of points in this edition, the Bastiladon, when the points come out. Because at the moment, if you've just joined us, we're using the latest 3rd edition points for this event, because the points have not been leaked, which is so weird. Everything else has been leaked. All the war scrolls have been available somewhere. Some people have been on live streams selling views of the war scrolls. Some people have just been showing them off willy-nilly. And some others are slyly leaking them out. The core rules have been out for a while, leaked. So, into the final game. And we're against Seraphon again, this time with a Stegodon and a Bastiladon. And Gits with a load of Spider Riders, an Arachnarok Spider with a Wizard on it, and some Loon, what are they called? Loon Boingrot? Loon Knights or something? Yeah, so squigs with knights on the back that do good charge damage. And for this game, I've changed it up again. We've got Long Strikes, we've got Bastion, but we've also got Yndrasta and the Concussors. So I've only got 4 units. My teammate has gone for 2 Stonehorn, a Tyrant, and a Butcher, and that's it. So no Mournfang in this one. We've only got a very tiny number of units. And the battle plan that we're using in this one, let me pull this up here. So it is... It's 6 objectives one. Is it the one that we already did? I think it is a... No, it's not repeated the one we already did. Can I find the picture of this one though? That's the question. Aha, there it is. So this one is the better part of Valor. So how this one works is... The objectives are in the same position as the last game, but you score 2 if you control 1 objective, 2 if you control 2 or more, and then 2 if you control more than your opponent, so up to 6, and then 4 for a battle tactic. You also, the twist on this one is that, okay, this is weirdly complicated, but you can become dominant on an objective. You can do that if you're a non-hero unit and you kill another unit on an objective, and then when you become dominant, you add 10 to your control score. So once you kill a unit on an objective, you are incredibly difficult to shift off the objective without being killed. However, if you're the underdog, then you can add 1 to hit rolls against dominant units. So, interesting twist. We'll see if that comes up. We have learned from our mistakes and put a unit on all 3 objectives at the start, just so we're not giving up easy points at the start of a game. And I've got the Concussors and Yndrasta in the sky. Yndrasta seems like a really obvious choice to put in the sky, because her abilities aren't super long range, and she has a 3d6 charge. So when she comes down, if she's trying to make a 9-inch charge, that is very easy on 3 dice, compared to on 2 dice. So she seems a really good choice for that. And you can also pick the monster that you want to try and hit with her at the perfect time as well. So, the enemy have got 4 endless spells as well, including a Scuttle Tide. I do think someone should make a Skittle Tide where they paint each one in a different colour of the rainbow, like Skittles. I think that would be nice. So there's the Loon Shrine. If you destroy that, then the Gits cannot come back to life. And this piece of terrain for the Seraphon gives them some buffs as well, and it also dishes out mortal wounds from terrain, which is interesting. So there's a unit of 20 Sauruses here. The Bastiladon, which is the fighty one with the snakes, and the Stegodon. So, turn 1, and we go first. So, we decide we want to hold this objective as our first battle tactic, hold this piece of terrain. So, as a counter to that, the enemy use a counter spell in our hero phase and teleport a unit of 10 spiders all around the piece of terrain. So we're going to have to kill them if we want to take it now, which forces me to bring down the Concussors because we want to be charging in there and killing them. We don't shoot them because they would just take away the nearest ones and then we'd probably fail our charges. So, let's try and kill some spiders. And yes, the Concussors and Bastion all make their charges and we just obliterate a unit of spiders. They'll probably come back from the Loon Shrine, but at half strength, importantly. So you can see there, counterplay in effect. The opponents found out what our battle tactic was, which is to take this terrain piece. They then looked at their spells and then played a counter to use a command point, played the counter and teleported a unit to a place that was very inconvenient for us. Luckily, we were able to make the charges and clear them out, but you can see how there's much more counter for battle tactics now. Not only can you use spells and teleport in the opponent's turn at times, you can also redeploy regardless of distance from the enemy, unless you're already in combat or you're surrounded by the enemy. or you can countercharge as well to get into a position. So lots of ways of shutting down battle tactics. So we score 8 because we do not hold more objectives than the enemy, because frankly, look at that. There's a million bodies on them and we don't want to go there yet. So onto the enemy turn. And some spiders teleport into these woods. They would like to charge over and take this objective, which we've only got one ogre defending by the looks of it. The Scuttle Tide appears, which is going to block our movement. And we've got some Boing Grots who are going to be trying to get into combat with something down here. So what I was thinking as soon as this happened, I suggest that they're probably, in my mind, I'm thinking they're going to be attacking either the Stonehorn or Bastion. But if you attack Bastion, you pull the Concussors into combat. If you attack the Stonehorn, however, then we've got a relatively short countercharge with Bastion or the Concussors. And I think the Concussors are the choice in this situation, because not only do they have more attacks than Bastion, but when they charge, there is a 3-up chance that they will get strike first. Now, if you've got a whole unit of Extremist Chamber units, you can only use that on one of the units. But when they charge, 3-up chance of them striking first, and then also they have an ability so that 3-up they just prevent an enemy unit from using commands. So this unit here, if they are fighting there, I can countercharge into them, possibly strike first against them and kill loads, and possibly stop them all out defense or all out attacking as well. So, and I would also be able to all out attack on the Concussors for free because Bastion is nearby. So this is kind of a really devilish trap. So they do go in there, and it plays out exactly like I thought. So the Concussors countercharge, kill loads of them, and then they do some wounds to the Stonehorn. But the amount of attacks that just 4 of these squigs had, we were thinking if there was 10 of them, it would have taken like 10 minutes to roll all the dice. They have lots of attacks on the charge. Or they do extra damage, but they just have lots of attacks anyway. So I assume it's more attacks on the charge, because they did have a bucket of dice, even for just 4 guys. And then the Stonehorn fails to kill any of them, which is quite funny. So, you can see that at the end of the turn, the Loon Shrine does bring back some spiders. Only 5 though, because it comes back at half strength. But now I think it's a command point that you use for it. You don't have to roll. So it's like the Stormcast ability, except you can do it on all your units, which is powerful indeed. So they score 8. I know, they score... Did I even take a picture of it? I think they probably did, though. And into turn 2, we get the first crack at the next round. So Bastion is going to try and kill these spiders. I'm going to try and shoot down these Loon Knights. Is that what they're called? Boing Grot Loon Knights or something? Anyway, I'm going to try and shoot them with my long strikes so that then the Concussors can charge into the spiders instead. And that's what happens. So the long strikes move up, shoot down the spiders, and I bring in Yndrasta. Now, I do not want a countercharge into Yndrasta from anything, because she could get killed before she gets a chance to strike, because there might be other things we want to attack with first, and I would rather she didn't die. I'd rather fight on her terms. So, we also want to kill the Loon Shrine. She drops down right behind the Loon Shrine, so there's not enough space for one of these big enemy monsters to get round there, because they've deployed it close to the back edge. So she can just punch and stab the Loon Shrine until it's destroyed. And then no more gits are coming back, which is great. So, you'd either deploy, if for optimal positioning, maybe the Loon Shrine should be touching the edge so that I can't drop in behind it, or further out so that I can't hide from your monsters. We get the Stonehorn over on the left side into these spiders. There's a potential counter charge from the Bastiladon, which is scary, but it's going to be using up a lot of command points. And Bastion and the Concussors get into the spiders. So the plan is for Bastion to pile in and punch the wizard. So the Bastiladon makes the counter charge into the Stonehorn there. All the spiders die. And then Bastion punches the wizard in the face with his hammer and kills it. Yndrasta takes some more wounds off the Loon Shrine, but she does not destroy it this turn. and a load of the spiders get killed, but there's still a couple left there fighting the Stonehorn. And 8 points in every turn so far, so we're about to go into turn 2 for the Gits and the Seraphon. So, here they go. The Scuttletide repositions a bit, and the Arachnarok is looking for who to charge. Now, at this point, I remind our opponents that Yndrasta has a 3d6 charge. So if you were to go here and attack Bastion, Yndrasta could potentially 3d6 charge, countercharge into you, and maybe kill you. I don't know whether I would want to do that, because she might just want to stay there and stab the Loon Shrine. If you charge into one of these units, then the other can countercharge into you. So, weirdly, the optimal thing to do is to either go for Bastion and use the Scuttletide to charge and lock up these two units so they can't countercharge, or go in between both so that there's no countercharging, because of course when they charge there's a chance the Concussors will get strike first, which is very scary, as we've established. So the Stegodon and the Saurus warriors are coming this way towards the Mournfang on the left, and Yndrasta use a shoot reaction, a counter shooting ability, to throw her spear and do 8 wounds to the giant spider, which is great. And then it charges in to Bastion and the Concussors, kills one of them, and there's another one left on 1 wound. And the Scuttletide is in as well. And then Bastion punches it in the face and it's dead. And Yndrasta kills the Loon Shrine, so the Gits are not coming back. So, we haven't killed any Seraphon yet, but there are only 2 Gits on the table, 2 spiders. The Mournfang, the Stonehorn over here gets killed. So, there's 2 Gits left and they're not coming back to life. And the entire Seraphon army is still alive. We've lost a Concussor and a Stonehorn. So, it's looking okay at the moment. It's equal, but our opponents are going first in round 3. Now, that is a double turn, so they can't score a battle tactic. However, if they didn't take the turn, what would happen? We would score 1,000,000 objectives, and we would probably have a go at killing something like this Bastillodon. We've got loads of units down here that could shoot it and multi-charge it to death, hopefully. So they probably did the right thing here, because even if they don't score a battle tactic, they need the turn to stop us scoring big on our next turn. Because they can possibly kill something, kill some of this stuff, and just get onto more objectives to stop us claiming them in our turn. So, yep, there's not much going on. They're not going to attack any of these 3 deadly units I've got here. Now, I'm actually hoping they shoot down the final Concussor on his final wound, because then I can use a command point to bring back one of them at full health later on. So rather than using a command point to try and rally heal him, I'm going to save it and then try and bring him back to life if they kill him. You can see one of the long strikes has been killed by a ranged attack. Bastillodon into the Tyrant, and Stegodon into the Stonehorn, which is going to be a good fight. The other Bastillodon onto objectives with the Tyrant there. And the 2 spiders are not in combat. But the Burning Head Endless Spell has gone into combat with the Butcher. So the Stegodon piles in and gets on a toe onto this objective. But if it doesn't kill the Stonehorn can pile in d6 plus 3, so it could pile in onto the objective again and take it back. Bastillodon kills the Ogre Tyrant. The Stonehorn rolls high enough to pile in onto the objective and then hit back. So there are a few wounds done there, but I think it's still got 12 left by the look of those dice. And then it's going to be our turn next. So we lost the Ogre Tyrant, and the Stegodon has got into combat and done a lot of damage to this guy. And the Bastillodon is now in a good position maybe to countercharge there as well. So they score 6, but no battle tactic. So we're going to be able to score now. So Yndrasta gets onto this objective. The Sauruses redeploy onto it, so they're holding it. They managed to roll high enough. I think they had to use their golden dice reroll to sufficiently reach it, though. Bastion gets onto this objective, and the long strikes move away, and they're just going to shoot. Because if the enemy want to come and get them, they can come off the objective to do so, and that's fine. And that's that. So we score 8 points. because we were able to get a battle tactic. I can't remember which one it was. But we didn't accomplish much killing-wise because we just don't have much left. So, our opponents get the first crack at the next round, unfortunately. And that means that this guy is probably going to die because he's going to get munched by enemy monsters. So Yndrasta is going to get charged by these Sauruses. So Yndrasta's plan is to redeploy backwards, and then if they charge her, they then bring themselves into prime position for a Bastion countercharge. And these two heroes against 20 Saurus warriors is a very interesting fight. I think I would kill quite a lot of them if both of the heroes get to fight. So she redeploys 4 inches. Spiders are rallying, so that's why they've got more left now. And these guys are getting ready to charge the Stonehorn. The Saurus unit goes into Yndrasta, and Bastion is going to attempt to countercharge, but he does not make it, sadly. And the spiders manage to kill the ogre. Stonehorn is in combat. The Sauruses pile in and get Yndrasta down to 2 wounds remaining. This combat rages on, and they get 10 points though, because they're holding millions of objectives now, because we've barely got anything left. And they do get a battle tactic as well. So as the battle tactics are played more frequently, we'll just be able to recall them quite easily. But at the moment, they're obviously not that fresh in anyone's mind. But generally, it's the same thing as usual. You either kill a particular kind of unit or you be in a particular position on the table, which isn't as easy now with all the reactions you can do. Because you can react onto the place the enemy wants to be, so you can deny battle tactics that way. So I bring down a concussor for a command point because the unit died, and I'm going to try and kill that character, kill that hero for a battle tactic, and then take the objective as well. He redeploys, but not far enough away. It's still only a 10-inch charge, so we'll see if I can do that. Yndrasta gets killed, but Bastion does get in this time and kills some of them. But sadly, the concussor did not make the charge, so no battle tactic, but we do get 4 points. Then the enemy gets to go first in round 5, and they're just going to score big because they're already on loads of objectives, and it's very sad. Stegodon going after the long strikes who redeploy away, and Bastion takes a wound, but then he's going to womp loads of them and heal as he does. Concussor gets charged by the Bastillodon and spiders and takes some wounds. Bastion is surrounded in combat, and he's not dead though. And the concussor does go down, but manages to take some spiders out with him. And another 10-point turn, so yeah, it's getting away from us a bit here, but we've just run out of units, I'm afraid. So the long strikes teleport away onto an objective because they can. Because they are, let's see, so they are a vanguard unit. And that means, you can see I'm looking at their war scroll here. So they are in the vanguard chamber. So that means that once per turn in your movement phase, you can pick a vanguard unit that's not in combat. On a 3+, they can redeploy anywhere else on the battlefield more than 9 inches from the enemy. So they weren't in combat because this guy... Let's go back. Because obviously he would have killed them if they were in combat. So they were like there. So they teleport away onto an objective, score some points, and they shoot at the wizard. I think they kill him actually. So I think I get a battle tactic for that, because I think he was part of the general's regiment. So I think that was the... Or do you have to... Don't think you have to do that one in combat. And then Bastion slugging it out with the Sauruses. So we score a few points there to make it credible, the scoreline at the end. Creditable, should I say. And that's the end. So you can see here the lovely ogres representing Andy and Rem. Rem with a Kill Andy banner. And Andy ammo. This very anti-me, this Remington miniature. And he's got Horn, of course, representing his musical talent. And I've got my orange outfit, as you'd expect. And some gold. Because I guess everything I say is gold, really. And very cool. So those were in use at the event, and I got to play against them. And here's another very exciting picture. So, at one of the previous Spiteful 16s, we were asked if we had any like snacks or anything that we would like bringing along, and jokingly, kind of in a tongue-in-cheek manner, acting as if I was some big superstar, said, yes, I want some M&Ms, but only the blue ones, thinking that that wasn't going to be a thing that could happen. But Mr. Francois, the benefactor of the event, on his international travels, did actually find some blue M&Ms and brought them along and then gave them to me. So I can definitely feel like an A-list celebrity now. I demanded blue M&Ms and they were provided. How do you feel about that? So, let's have some general overview on 4th edition. Obviously we don't know the points yet, so I can't give too much feedback on the units other than whether they just feel like they do their job, regardless of the points. So Yndrasta obviously does a good job against monsters. Bastion feels strong because of his... Obviously, he's tough to kill, and he whomps things in the face, but the most powerful thing might be the ability to issue all-out attack for free for units nearby. So if you've got a unit that can shoot nearby and a unit that can fight nearby, or just himself, he can do both of those things, although you don't need to all-out attack his own shooting because he already hits on 2s. Then you can be saving yourself 4 command points in a battle round, which is often your entire budget. So Bastion can almost double how many command points you can spend if you position him properly. So anything that gets you extra command points, or issues commands for free, or issue commands to multiple units for the price of 1 in this edition is going to be like gold dust, I think, and Bastion is a guy that can do that. So I think that definitely gives him a good role in the army. So depending on his cost in points, I can see Bastion being a mainstay. The concussors seem really good now. The ability to shut off commands on enemy units is very powerful on a 3+. And they just do decent damage outside of that. They're just pretty strong. They're down to 5 wounds in this edition, which isn't a huge deal. And they seem good. Long strikes, very good. You would think that knocking 12 inches off the range of long strikes would make them not very powerful. But they've given them other abilities now, like the ability to teleport and run and shoot in the enemy turn. So I think they're good as well. Long strike's still potent. Can't say much about all the other units yet because I've not used them all. But I'm sure I will soon. In general, the edition, I like 4th edition so far. It feels like it has a flow to it. Even though you're technically interrupting the enemy turn more, it's at a fixed time. So it's way less fiddly and the whole game just flows. You don't have to nitpick and jump on your opponent for coming within 9 inches to set off redeploy. Just wait till they've done all their stuff, and then you get to react to it. You just wait till they've done all their stuff in the next phase, and then you do a reaction to it. So there's less jumping in mid-turn, there's less abilities that you have that interrupt the flow, because it's only once they've finished everything in a phase you can then do your stuff. Like, they do all their spells, you do a counter spell. And everything else that you do in their turn would be like unbinding a spell or all-out defense when you get shot at, which is straightforward. So I really like the flow. I prefer it to 3rd edition flow-wise, just for the reasons I laid out there. There's changes to things like piling in, so you can't take enemies out of combat anymore, which take away some of the weird, annoying shenanigans. So I like that, because piling in first, or having some sneaky trick where you can pile in and take people out of combat, was always a really feel-bad moment, I think, in 3rd edition. So they've taken out a lot of things that can catch you out, and they've brought in more things that you can interact with in the opponent's turn, but they're predictable, and you know they're coming every time, whoever you're facing, so you know to look out for them. So previously, only certain armies, I think it was the ogres, had like a countercharge ability, but everyone does that now. So whatever you're doing, whenever you're charging into units, you're thinking, is there a unit nearby that could countercharge? Do I need to tie them up? Do I need to stay a certain distance away from them? So it's always in your mind now, so it's not going to catch you out. Like redeploying, you know that when you've finished all your movement, one enemy unit is probably going to move d6 inches. So you have to factor that into your positioning. It's not happening in the middle of your turn. It's not happening when you accidentally creep within 9 inches. It's just at the end every time you know it's coming. So I really like that. And obviously it's Age of Sigmar, so units will have abilities on their war scrolls that change things in the game. So things will catch you out until you learn them, but the core mechanics shouldn't catch you out anymore once you've played a few games, so I really like that. Kahadin didn't care much for 3rd edition and didn't play too much of it. 3rd edition is the edition I've played by far the most of Age of Sigmar. I played 1st edition a reasonable amount, I skipped most of 2nd, and 3rd edition I played a lot. And I enjoyed it a lot as a game, but it's very fiddly. And I think they've taken out a lot of the fiddly elements of it. They've taken out weapon ranges. Everyone's just 3-inch weapon range now. So everything that was fiddly and annoying about 3rd edition, they've taken out a lot of it. So I am a big fan so far of 4th edition. Alex says, does the game have legs? Asking someone that won't ever play Sigmar but wants a player's perspective, it seems kind of dead. I think the whole Age of Sigmar died a bit in recent months because people are just waiting for this edition, and the last edition was dead because of that. So I can see, if people play it, I think they'll like it, this edition. You're way less limited in what you can take in your army as well. So when Age of Sigmar launched, you could put whatever you want in your army, there were no restrictions at all, and that was very new player friendly, because if you walk into a shop and say, I want to play and I just want to have like 5 of those magma droths, that's what I like, I want to use just them. It's like, okay, you can do that. That's your army. In 2nd edition, I think they introduced more limitations. By 3rd edition, most armies had ways to turn the units you like into battle line, but there were still some limitations on it for certain armies. You couldn't take all the cool stuff for all the armies, so you were still limited, and you still had to take certain units to get the battalions as well, which you got bonuses from, for example, the battle regiment, where you could 1-drop. In this edition, your regiments are very easy to construct, army selection, you just have a hero and certain units. You can take whatever you want though. So if you take auxiliary units, then the enemy will get extra command points, I think. But you can do it. You can take whatever you want again. So it's very new player friendly, and you would start that way, and then as you build up your collection, you would then make an army that probably doesn't have auxiliary units in. We're waiting to find out which heroes can take which units in their regiment at the moment. That's one of the things that I haven't seen leaked anywhere. So once we get that information, we'll know which heroes can come with which units. And I would imagine for Stormcast it'll be linked to which chamber they're in, more than anything. So if you want to take, for example, a unit from the Vanguard chamber, like the Long Strikes, you'd probably have to take a hero from that chamber. So, whoever they are. And some of them, do they all even have chambers, though? Because I don't know if Yndrasta is in a chamber at all. I don't think she is, so I'm going to guess that, like, Yndrasta can probably take any units in her regiment, because she doesn't have a specific chamber on her war scroll. She's just a war master. So that'll be interesting. What about Bastion? Let's have a look at him. So he doesn't seem to have a chamber either, but he doesn't have war master, which seems kind of weird considering he's the Lord Commander of the Stormcast Eternals, second in command only to Sigmar himself. So it's very odd that he's not a war master. So yes, Bastion, don't see a chamber there, so maybe he can take any units in his regiment. So a few rules that we still don't have yet that we're waiting to find out army construction wise, and we're waiting to see the points, which will obviously fluctuate up and down, so don't just write off a unit because their points aren't great at the moment. That's the most common thing they change in this game. They change points way more often than they change the actual rules of the units. So they don't always change them soon. Sometimes there's a unit that's really bad or overcosted, like Bastion was too expensive for 3 years, and then just before the edition ended they reduced his points, which seemed like a slap in the face. But Bastion, he's good now, so unless he's really expensive again, comparatively with other units, then I think he's going to get some play. You know who else is really good now? The Stardrake. So I've seen the War Scrolls for the Stardrakes. They are both very good, actually. Both variants of the Stardrake definitely worth considering for your army. They are very powerful in combat now, they've retained the ability to just eat enemy models, which is cool. So all the abilities that you have that just remove models from play or dish out mortal damage are mostly things you can do in combat or at short range now. So mortal wound shooting is pretty much gone. Alex says, plenty of people buy the models, but in the game's entire existence I've seen less than a dozen games played. The old world, on the other hand, has people playing week in, week out. I'm sure that's area dependent, because I see, obviously I live in Nottingham, so I see a lot of people playing Age of Sigmar at Warhammer World and at the TSN Arena. Lots of Age of Sigmar events that are routinely full there. So I think it is a thriving community. It depends on your area, definitely. The one thing I can't get too many games of around here for some reason is Kings of War, actually. Considering it's Nottingham and Mantic are based there as well, you would think there would be more Kings of War events. But I've run one here, and other than that, there haven't been that many in this area. It does, yes, depend on the community. Yeah, we've got at least one person there in the comments who says AOS is huge in their community. Yes, so in this area around here, anytime I want to get an Age of Sigmar event to play in, or an Old World event, it's very easy. They're never more than a few weeks apart, so I can just play non-stop tournaments for those games. I can get an Old World game at every club night at the moment, so I'm playing that once a week and doing the battle reports. And I'll be able to play Age of Sigmar pretty much whenever I want as well. So it's just going to be a non-stop tidal wave of content from this channel. When all the Stormcast War Scrolls are released, I'll probably do a video looking at particularly the units that I use in the game and talking about them and how either I'm pleased or displeased with the changes, particularly when we see the points as well. That's going to be important. I'll wait till the points and then talk about them and tell you what kind of lists I'm thinking about running going forward for Age of Sigmar. I do have my Sons of Behemat army as well, so I'll be keeping a keen eye on those. I think Mr. Honest Wargamer Rob just did a video looking at the Sons of Behemat War Scrolls, so I'll probably have to watch that and see what he's got to say about it. But they're my other army, so I'll be running them at some point as well. It's just fun times at the moment. Old World is new and exciting, people playing it. Age of Sigmar version 4 is fresh and exciting. They seem to have fixed a lot of the issues people had with the game, and it seems refreshing and fun. And it's just a great time to be in games, particularly the GW games. The ones I care about anyway. 40k. It would be a great time for me to get into 40k, but no. Because I really like Dark Angels, I just can't do it financially at the moment because I'm waiting to spend all my money on Dwarves and Age of Sigmar version 4. So 40k is not something I'm looking at right now. Maybe in the future, but not right now, because I'm already playing, at tournaments, I'm playing Age of Sigmar, Old World, Kings of War, Dead Zone, and Dreadball. And then casually, I'm playing The Walking Dead, and I would be interested in playing Bolt Action casually. Another game I like is Relics, and that's coming back, so I'm going to be looking to play that as well. So, people out there who say they can only play one game system at a time, I think I would go nuts if I had to play less than, like, 4 game systems. And thankfully, I've got the kind of mind where I can keep different rule sets separate. So I don't know whether that's entirely a good thing, because it does mean that I'm then tempted to spend loads of money on different game systems. But I think also doing these videos helps a lot with that as well, because you're really drilling down everything you know about the game by in-depth analysing every game you ever play. So I think that does help. Right, thanks for people who have been watching this all the way through. 2 hours long, first ever 4th edition Age of Sigmar tournament. The only thing we were missing were the points and some of the army construction rules. All in all, I think it's very exciting times ahead, and you'll see more on this channel. There are Age of Sigmar tournaments coming up thick and fast, and Old World as well. So, don't forget to check out all the links in the description, and like the video, of course, and subscribe and all that fun stuff. And if you want to keep the non-stop tidal wave of delicious content flowing onto your YouTube feed from this channel across various game systems, why not pledge your entire life savings in the Patreon or the PayPal link as well? And at the moment, that's mostly going to pay for Dwarves for Old World and some new Stormcast, probably, because you can never have too many Stormcast. You know what I really need? More heroes on foot. I've only got like 18 of them. I could use a few more. I think that's fair. Okay, time to wrap this one up. Thanks for watching, everybody. Remember to comment along what you thought about this video, what you thought about the changes to the rules, what you're hoping for in this edition. Anything related to 4th edition, drop it in the comments, and I will respond. All that remains to be said at this point is, good night out there, whatever you are.